It was only a matter of time, really, until this unfortunately happened. Now, of course, about, 2 weeks ago now, we warned about the fact that the British steel industry was sounding the alarm bells over the uh, over the import restrictions that it wanted to keep in place so that the UK would essentially not become a dumping ground for cheap foreign steel. Now, one of the big things that the Brexiteers continuously kept on, squawking about was how wonderful Brexit would be for our heavy industries again. Apparently, we'd be able to, quote, make things again. Well, here's the thing. We already did make things when we were in the EU. Unfortunately, the economics of the UK have changed, predominantly because of the Tory party wanting to impose that shift onto us. And here's the thing. If these big industries go, especially in the steel industry, that is ultimately only going to really hurt the North even more. Like I say, we've seen the fallout of when big industries like the coal industries left the UK in the 80s. The steel industry almost being destroyed or wiped out because of Brexit would be an absolute catastrophe for jobs up here in the north. But of course, the Tories don't care, because as far as they're concerned, any company or industry that cannot survive this coming change, or, they call it change, but it's an absolutely catastrophic change, they literally will not be able to survive, because other countries help their steel industries in ways that our government just chooses not to do, through subsidies, through helping them pay money for exports, through helping with energy costs. And like I say, we could have done this in the EU as well. This isn't something that the government could all of a sudden do. This is an industry that has once again been heavily neglected by this Tory government for well over the past decade. And like I say, this is a very, and should be a very, key industry for the government to actually worry about, but it doesn't care, because it is not interested in the levelling up agenda. Because to actually help the UK steel industry would meaning that you have to maybe not be offer those 0% tariffs, or put restrictions on other things that would help the steel industry. And thus, as we've said many times before, the more that the Tories plump for global Britain, the more and more it undermines the idea of levelling up here at home. So before we jump into today's article, please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to those people who support me. And also do remember the YouTube memberships are now open as well. So this comes from The Guardian, and the title is UK Steel Industry Fury as the government looks to drop EU import restrictions. So a government body has recommended the removal of limits inherited from the EU on about a half of the UK's steel imports, in a move that has provoked fury from the British producers. The Trade Remedies Authority, or the TRA, said on Friday that it would revoke the limits of over 9 categories of steel product, some including bars and wires, meaning imports will no longer face steep tariffs after quotas have been filled. It extended the limits of 3 years on another 10 products, including some for steel for railways, gas pipes and large sheets. The EU introduced these limits back in 2019 to protect the industry from the glut of steel products delivered from the US after Donald Trump's imposed tariffs. The TRA is sponsored by the Department for International Trade, run by Liz Truss. She has also signed off on the authority's recommendations, but she is expected to accept them. Gareth Stace, the Director General of the industry lobby UK group UK Steel, said the decision was a complete hammer blow and an utter madness. This would leave the UK producers vulnerable to import surges. On their first major test in a post-Brexit trading environment, the UK's new system has failed our domestic steel sector, he said. The TRA removed the limits on some products because it did not find evidence that the UK was importing them in large quantities, or increased imports would cause significant damage to the UK steel industry as a whole. One of the preliminary recommendations was reversed after feedback from the producers, the Reuters, however, reported. And the producers, including Sanjay Gupta's Liberty Steel, which is urgently seeking finance after the closing of its main lender, successfully argued for continued protections for large weld steel tubes used in offshore wind turbines. The steel industry has also argued that the government has failed to take into account the effect of small-scale producers, and that the removal of those protections on certain products will undermine the industry as a whole by denting overall volumes. The UK has been examining which EU import protections to retain after it has left the EU single market on the 31st of December in 2020, and some government figures have said that the removal of trade barriers was a key advantage to leaving the EU. The prospect of competing with the rest of the world has alarmed some industries, including steel and farming, which argue they are unable to compete on a level playing field because of higher regulatory standards and costs in the UK. Are we shocked that the UK steel industry was going to be next? No, not at all. I've been warning of this for at least, like I say, I started talking about this 2 weeks ago. So the fact that these are now gone signals huge changes in the British steel industry's fortunes. And like I say, unfortunately, this industry is about to get thrown under the bus massively. Like I say, I'm in Barnsley, down the road Sheffield. The steel industry is still a big thing in Sheffield. And if some of those plants close, it would cause absolutely catastrophe. And they are right to point out that there aren't just like large scale producers as well. There are like small scale places as well. Like I say, Sheffield's full of them. These very small steel creating places, they're still there, and they employ about 20, 40, 50 people. And that may not sound a lot, but if you think that it's one of those closes, or like a couple of those close, that could be about 150 jobs of experienced steel crafters, creators, smelters, I don't know what you would call them, steel industry workers that might not be able to absorb, the Sheffield economy might not be able to absorb that. And if 3 go down at once, that could be an alarming sign that other closures could be very well close behind them. This is not a good state for this industry to be in. And one of the things that the Brexiteers said was that, again, getting rid of these trade barriers would be fantastic. No, it's not, because they don't care about the UK's own domestic producers. As far as the Tories are concerned, if the domestic producers manage to survive, good and great. They've been able to survive the coming cataclysm and have proved that they are nimble enough to survive in a modern UK economy. The only problem is that disaster would leave hundreds of thousands of unemployed people in its wake. And as we've said before at the start of this video, the idea that you can run a platform government that says global Britain one time and levelling up on another, and as we've said before, you cannot have both at once, because if you promote global Britain, it undermines our local industries, like what is happening here. And if you promote a levelling up agenda, you cannot have a global Britain agenda, because then you've got to have protections for domestic industries. And this is going to be the rolling problem that we are going to see going forward. So, as is always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button down below. And of course, please do remember to have a look down below for my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee. And also the YouTube memberships are now open as well. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and thank you to all those people who do help support the channel. And of course, we'll see you all next time.